Hello, my name is Tony Hilberg, and since May of 2016, I've been the Chief Financial Officer for the Seguin Independent School District. This evening, I'd like to take just a few moments to share with you the results of financial activities for the general fund as of the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2016 for Seguin ISD. Before we begin, I'd like to make sure that you note, as it mentions here at the bottom, that the numbers that we're reflecting in this information is unaudited at this time. We do anticipate that the final audit will be completed by late November of 2016, and once that official audit report is available, we will publish it on the district's website. As we look at any organization the size of Seguin ISD, it's important to recognize that there are two basic categories of reporting the financial transactions. The first of which is the operating activity. And operating activities reflect the organization's day-to-day business. The revenue in the case of Seguin ISD would be that of taxpayer collections as well as state funding. And in those operating activities, the types of expenditures that you would reflect would be things that are routine in their nature. Things such as payroll, utilities, maintenance, and repairs. With regard to operating activities, any organization, Seguin Independent School District included, would try not to use fund balance to fund those activities. And now, as you can see from the slide, we've reflected, in addition to operating activities, the non-operating activity. And under that, you can see that the types of things reflected in non-operating activity would be large one-time purchases, things like large equipment and other capital improvements. These would be acceptable uses for fund balance for Seguin ISD or any other large organization. The two types of activities, operating activity as well as non-operating activity, both contribute to the overall combined activity of the organization. So here's a slide that shows the operating activity for Seguin ISD General Fund only as of June 30th, 2016. And as you can see, it shows the operating revenue of $56 million budgeted and the expense of $59 million budgeted. It's important to recognize that the budget can be a tool that is helpful during the course of the year. But at the end of the year, what really matters is the actual transactions. Let's focus on that column now. The actual revenue that the operating fund or the general operating fund brought in during the year was $57,285,546. The actual operating expense was $57,405,090. Obviously, that left a deficit of $119,544. So let's think about that $119,544. How bad is that? Because obviously no one wants to see expenses in excess of revenue. To quantify how significant that number is, let me give you an illustration. If you calculate what is called a loss factor, you do that by taking the overall loss, in this case from operating activities, $119,544, and you divide that by the total expense, in this case $57,405,090. You get what is called a loss factor, in this case 0.00208. Said another way, that would be 0.2%. Not 2%, but 0.2%. Let's determine how significant that is. If a family has a monthly take-home pay of $3,000, obviously that family would want to spend no more than that $3,000 in a given month. But if on a given month they did spend in excess of the $3,000 that they brought in, to the tune of the loss factor we've calculated, $1.00208, that would mean that in that month they had overspent by $6.24. Clearly, a family that has done that does not want to continue to do it in the future, but they would recognize that this is a fixable situation and not something to panic about. But now we also want to take a look at the non-operating activity as of June 30th, 2016, to get an overall picture of Seguin ISD's financial situation for the year. Once again, you can see that on the non-operating activities, we have the amended budget reflected. But remember, typically non-operating activity is funded by fund balance, not offset by taxpayer revenues or state funding. And also remember the fact that during the course of the year, the budget is helpful, but at the end of the year, it is the actual transactions that are what matter. And so you can see that there is a significant deficit on the non-operating activity for the year 2016. And that's attributed to exactly four things. The first is $80,075 was transferred from the general fund over to the district's parenting center fund. That transfer was necessary because federal dollars were insufficient to support the program. Therefore, the program had to be supported by the general fund. Additionally, $400,000 was used locally for building repairs and facility repairs throughout the district. This is a typical expense that the district uses each year to maintain buildings throughout the district. Additionally, $599,946 was spent on buses and other large equipment throughout the district. And finally, the largest component of that expense of non-operating activities, the $20,354,130, that money was transferred out of the general fund over to the Seguin High School Construction Fund. So what was that? It's a significant number, and we need to focus on it. And in order to truly focus on that number, we need to identify as to whether the district was over budget or simply underfunded. There is a difference. And so I'd like to share with you a very brief history of where the district started with regard to the high school project that led to this $20 million transfer. In 2012-13, the architects provided the district with design and cost estimates for constructing the high school to the tune of $63 million. And it was anticipated at that time that an additional $20 million would be necessary for furniture, fixtures, and equipment and other things associated with construction for an overall project cost of about $83 million. Therefore, in late 2013, the school board requested and voters approved $83 million worth of school bonds. Just a few months later, in mid-2014, the construction contractor came in with construction cost estimates that were significantly higher than the estimates originally provided by the architect. At that time, the district was faced with a choice, either to reduce the scope of the project, thereby reducing the cost, or to choose to supplement the additional cost from the general fund balance. The board decided not to reduce the scope of the construction project, but it decided to fund the difference from the general fund balance. In addition to that, the board asked a third party to audit the revised construction cost estimates and provide a recommendation. That third party was a recognized and respected third party that does things like this for school districts throughout the state, the Texas Association of School Boards, also known as TASB. And in the report, after TASB did its review, it made this statement: while there was a significant shortfall between bond funds and final construction costs, Seguin ISD has the financial stability to overcome this budget variance. Additional revenues from various funding sources have been identified to cover the budget shortfall. Adequate general fund balance remains for cash flow operations of the district. Therefore, the district is in a situation to move the money over to the construction fund and still be fiscally viable, financially okay. So here's the overall picture. The operating activity is shown at the top with the deficit of $119,000. The non-operating activity there in the middle with the $20 million, the most of which went over to the construction fund. And then you see the combined results. But in blue, you'll notice the overall effect on fund balance, in essence, the district's savings account. And you'll see that the beginning fund balance was $32 million, current year activity, $20,466,913, reducing that balance down to $11,668,437. The question is that bad? And in order to answer that, we want to look at an industry standard in determining where fund balance would need to be as a best practice for school districts. Best practice for school districts, according to TASB, TEA, and other respected sources, is that a district wants to have between 2 and 3 months worth of operating expense available in its fund balance, in the general fund, at any given point in time. So how do we calculate this and determine where Seguin ISD is? If you'll recall, the operating expense for Seguin ISD that we reflected earlier was $57,405,090. If you divide that by 12 months, you'll get a monthly operating expense of $4,783,758. If you multiply that monthly expense by 2, you'll see that we have $9,567,516 as the minimum that you would like to have in fund balance in order to be in compliance with best practices. And again, best practices is a goal. It is not a law. It's not a legal requirement, but it is a good rule of thumb for districts. Additionally, if you were to take that same monthly expenditure amount and multiply it by the 3 months, you'd get $14,351,274. Obviously, you can see where the district lands is somewhere right in the middle, and that's appropriate. So what does all of this mean? Well, it means that the district's financial results of 2016 are neither fantastic nor are they catastrophic. But what it also means is that we have a lot of work to do. And you see here a picture of the people that represent, the staff that represent the Seguin ISD Business Department. And they are the ones that will continue to work hard on behalf of the district to make sure that we remain fiscally responsible. These individuals, you may recognize some of them because they are your community members. Many of them are former students of Seguin ISD or the parents of students of Seguin ISD children. So, I'd also like to point out one last piece of information, and that is the fact that for the last 25 years straight, the Seguin Independent School District, the business department especially, has been responsible and recognized by the Government Finance Officers Association for its excellence in financial reporting. I'd like to assure you that the business department intends to continue this standard of excellence, not only in 2016, but in the years to come. In conclusion, I'd like to say I hope that this information was helpful. I realize it was in a summary format and somewhat brief, but hopefully it gives you an indication that we are in a situation with Seguin ISD that is manageable, and we are being responsible with taxpayer dollars. So now we want to roll up our sleeves and get to work, and we hope that you all have a wonderful year.